Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Jar of Marble dwellers and Jar of Marble curious. My name is Linda and this is Jar of Marbles. Hello, Bob. We're really glad that you have joined us today. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining and I've just been out in the garden for a while, and actually I cleaned the inside of my car too because that looked sort of like a bit of a dump truck. But anyway, we sorted that out, so it should be, much more pleasant. But anyway, I'm so glad that you're here because this week I wanted to talk a little bit about glimmers. I recently learned about this term called a glimmer, which is essentially the opposite of a trigger. A glimmer is the opposite of triggers, and the term became in trend when Deb Dana introduced this term in her book, The Polyvagal Theory in Therapy, back in 2018. While glimmer is an old concept, it was coined by Stephen Porges, a neuroscientist, I believe he was a psychologist as well, back in 1995. And in the theory, he explained how our nervous system keeps on searching for joyful rays or cues. The polyvagal theory, a theory proposed by Stephen Porges, or Porges, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, that describes how the mammalian autonomic nervous system evolved to keep us safe and alive. Glimmers are those micro moments in your day that make you feel real happiness and peace and just a feeling of gratitude. I know what that feels like. Yeah, me too, Bob. Been feeling them for years, just didn't know that they were called glimmers. But then, this is what happens over the years. There will be many of us who have felt this sensation, and now there's a word or a term for it. And it's easy to be on the lookout for glimmers. A real pleasure, in fact, is the more these tiny moments will actually begin to appear. The first appearance of a planted seed, the first glimmer of life. If you're into gardens, it's just such a lovely moment. I planted some seeds this week, and because we're really well and truly into spring, heading very quickly into summer, everything just grows within days, which I just love. And our brains are naturally wired, apparently, to experience negative bias, meaning we have a tendency to pay more attention to negative information over the positive.
Oh, that's a bit true, isn't it?
It is, Bob. And if you're having trouble identifying what your own glimmers are, here are some of the common ones you may relate to. Feeling the warmth of the sun, enjoying the ocean, the sea air, the smell of cut grass.
Oh, I don't like the smell of cut grass. It smells like urine to me.
Well, that's okay, Bob. We all relate to different smells. That's cool. That is the point. Find your glimmers.
Well, yes, I am that. I am cool.
That you are, Bob. Now,
what about a rainbow?
Yes, that's exactly. Rainbows are lovely and will lift how you feel. It could, if it's something you really enjoy seeing, then that feeling that's going on inside you is a glimmer. It could be sunlight dancing on water.
Oh, yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too, Bob. Smelling lavender or some other relaxing scent. Snow falling, petting an animal, a cat, horse, dog, whatever animal, driving your dream car or bike, seeing a butterfly, being in nature, a stranger smiling at you in public, not like weirdly, the perfect cup of tea or coffee. If something bad happens, our brain wants to remember, so it'll be more equipped to notice and tackle similar situations in the future. Gratitude, on the other hand, is a practice that does take time and persistence. And we have talked about gratitude quite a bit on this podcast and the science behind it, and it is an amazing thing to actually introduce into your life on a regular basis. We have to train our brains to notice the good things that go on around us. Now, I'm not one for toxic positivity, and I don't believe in forcing yourself to feel grateful for things that you're not truly grateful for, but I do wholeheartedly believe in a daily gratitude practice. I have seen firsthand the shift it can create in your mindset. I know if I look for happiness, kindness and fun, that is what I'll find or create. If you spend your day looking for the negative, hurtful and boring, that is what you will feel and find. Be happy, make someone smile and feel joy. What you put out to the world is what you will get back. A great mind shift for your mindset is calling positive actions for your day, a positive inventory of the day, if you will, has intention all over it. This mindset is worth striving for because we all know in this life that there are many negative things fighting for our attention. I mean, just turn on the TV, the news. But if you really want change in your change, really, really want it, you have to choose it and keep choosing it. An example is say, I'm having a jolly good chat and it starts turning to the negative aspect and it seems to be staying there. In that moment, I can choose to say that, I need to go now, or do we have to take this route? And I suppose it depends on who you're talking to that you would feel comfortable enough to say, how are we doing this again? That appears to be the choices that, that we can make right now. And I find anything that's too drama-filled, I just need to kind of walk stage left, as it has nothing to do with me, and our conversation can feel like dumping grounds for rubbish thinking that only brings the energy really low, and it's yuck.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
No, me neither, Bob. I'm not interested in feeling like my back is against the wall and it's all downhill from here and it's never going to change. I mean, just hearing those words and those sentences makes you sort of feel like, ugh, yeah, So, no, not doing it. Choosing to be more buoyant. I'm interested in getting broader in my contemplations and not pulled into the same. That is mental pollution. Now, back to these glimmers. Now, as we know, glimmers are often referred to as the opposite of triggers. They are small moments when our biology is in a place of connection or regulation, which cues our nervous system to feel safe and calm. Glimmers can help us cope with stress, trauma, negative emotions by bringing us back to safety and connection. And I tell you what, that's got to be a good thing. I know. Good. Thank you. Some examples of glimmers are listening to your favourite song, smelling a fresh flower, hugging a loved one, or feeling the sun on your skin. There are so many. There will be so many that I haven't mentioned. I know that if, say, I'm sitting on the lounge and maybe I'm reading or something and I may have a series of not so great thoughts going through my head, something that's got me down, and I can feel that it's bugging me and I can really feel it's starting to set in. At that moment, I'll do some action that doesn't make sense. I might stand up and start doing some star jumps, or I might start dancing funny, or I'll run outside and spend some time in the garden. I know I can sometimes be suddenly hugged by a warm feeling that comes over me, and I feel a knowing of happiness within myself. And looking back, I've experienced it many times in my life, and I'm sure that you will have too. I recall as a teenager that I knew I was happy. I just remember this particular day and the sun was shining, and I literally was enjoying the sun. All seemed to be at peace in my life. I felt a little humbled by gratitude. In truth, I didn't think that at the time. Just looking back, we've just got sayings and different words, don't we now? But looking back, I recall those overwhelming feelings of straight, flat-out joy. I remember I was around about 16, and by the time I was 17, much had happened in that year, when I think all that had transpired had made me realise at that age that happiness could be fleeting, but I didn't know that happiness could come back. It felt like a kind of lottery that I'd found some happiness for no apparent reason, but I do know that it felt awesome, and that when you know you're happy and feel those glimmers, embrace them wholeheartedly, because they will pass, and that's okay because they will also return. And when I was younger, I didn't know that. I knew it was fleeting. I now know that they will come back around. The glimmers, the distinct feeling of joy and flat-out peace, there's just no other way to describe it. Years into my life and 3 kids later, in amongst the everyday get to it, the highs, the lows, the achievements and the everydayisms, I would be hit sometimes with a glimmer. And there was a time when I thought it was like a fax from God, or when we're saying fax, you can now understand that we're talking, many, many years ago, or the powers that be, an archangel, for example, letting me know that all is okay. And because life was treacherous in spots back then, those glimmers really gave me hope and a strength that I hung to for dear life. I recall thinking once, it must have been on TV, as we lived in the bush, TV wasn't a big part of our lives. lives, mainly because we couldn't get it. The was really bad reception, but on occasion you'd get it. There was a documentary on cults in Australia. And I do recall thinking that it is at those desperate moments for people, deep sadness is how a cult would seem like a way out if you were interested in being a part of a cult. I guess they wouldn't think they are in a cult. They may think they're a part of a big family that promised contentment and muffins. This is where people who are lost get sucked right in with the promise of a happy ever after, possibly the deeds to your house and strict rules over your family and friends. The basics. This is when people can hand over their agency, stop thinking for themselves, and I knew from experience that we can suffer, yes, most definitely, but we'll pull ourselves out because we will. Things will change and we just keep going. I've always been very wary of anything or any group that stands for having a say in your life with their made-up stories and a leader who's dripping in gold. I find it hard to compute that people don't look at that and go, now there's something wrong with this picture, something quite wrong with this equation. A glimmer comes over me and I shake my own hand and say to me, good on you for having your own mind.
I'm very glad that you do.
I bet you do, Bob. I get that.
Thank you.
That's all right. And you know what? How about a little bit of a thank you? So experts who study cults suggest the human need for comfort prompts people to seek out others or things to soothe their fears. There's something inherently wrong that people, hundreds of thousands of people, hand over their entire lives to made-up stories, to promise of, forever and ever, and let's just say the stories were true. Bad behaviour is still bad behaviour. And with so many people who have broken away from religions and religious cults over the years, and so many of their stories, can be read online and stories and movies and documentaries, and it shows the abuse and horrific experiences. Again, the remaining members know this, but they will stick to the lies. They could do with a glimmer or two, I'd imagine. What do you think about that? Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely madoodly. Now, where our focus goes, energy flows and our nervous system responds accordingly. We can easily identify our triggers, those things that activate our stress, tension and gets us all fired up. It's easy to focus on the problem or issue that's causing us some level of worry and anxiety, but how does that serve us? One of the purposes of being triggered is that it allows us to reflect on the underlying emotions and feelings, as well as our beliefs, our values, and even boundaries. It helps us to realise when boundaries have been overstepped or values have been ignored. However, many times the solution to any or all of these requires us to be regulated or in a regulated state first so that we can make better choices and respond to situations without overreacting. Glimmers are the opposite of triggers. They activate the ventral vagal pathway and allow us to feel calm and connected. They can help us to self-regulate our nervous system or even prevent an overreaction when faced with a trigger. Glimmers are the opposite to triggers. And each day we are triggered into action by lots of different things, and this isn't usually a problem. We recover and get ourselves and our nervous systems back to baseline. Glimmers activate a different part of our nervous system, the part that relaxes us and just makes us feel safe, connected, engaged, soothed, calm, but mostly regulated. We can learn how to find ours and how to notice this feeling when it happens. Uncertainty is hard to live with, isn't it? And the stress and fear that often accompany it can be really demanding, especially when it comes to the nervous system. A trigger is a cue that you are in danger, and a glimmer is a cue that you're safe. And think of a moment you had, no matter how fleeting it might have been, where you felt safe and connected, whether with yourself or with others. Glimmers will feel a little different in everyone's bodies, but they're those warm, fuzzy feelings where you feel cosy and safe. Just as triggers can be both internal and external, from a thought of a traumatic situation that spontaneously comes up to a scene, a song that triggers intense feelings as associated with the situation, so can glimmers. In fact, one person's trigger might be another person's glimmer.
Oh, I think I get it now.
Good, Bob. It can be helpful to keep track of your glimmers, just as you might keep track of triggers or other negative thoughts. You can do this in a journal or in a notes app on your phone. I do both. I take notes on my phone, and at the end of the days, most days, I journal, and if I'm struggling with anything, I will write at the top of the page negative thoughts, and underneath them, I'll just spill out what was bugging me, thoughts that I couldn't regulate, and getting to the bottom of why I felt a bit blue or totally framped out of my cramp.
Framped out of your cramp?
Yes, Bob, that's part of my personal invented lexicon that describes the level of how upset I may have been or I am.
Your personal language?
Yep, I started it years ago when my daughters were really young, and it helped them to describe their feelings in levels.
Oh.
Anyway, so I write that out. I write out my negative thoughts, and there may not have been any obvious negative thinking, but if there was, I make sure I write it down. Now, the science behind writing things down is absolutely amazing. I love when things are backed by science. When you're writing something down with a pen and paper, you're stimulating a collection of cells in the base of your brain known as the reticular activating system, otherwise known as the acronym RAS. The RAS is the filter for all of the information your brain needs to process, and it gives more attention to what you are currently focusing on. In other words, the physical act of writing brings the information to the forefront and triggers your brain to pay close attention. Now, the reticular activating system, to give more clarity, if you get the news, say, that you're pregnant, suddenly all you see is pregnant women, or you want to buy, say, a red motorbike. Again, you notice all the red motorbikes on the roads, parked up driveways. The physical act of writing brings the information to the forefront of your brain and triggers the brain, as I said, to really pay close attention. Hence, so when you write down how you feel, it gives more clarity as to what to do about it, where it's coming from. Is it an old trigger that maybe you've realised that you have actually put to bed, that it was simply that someone spoke about it without knowing you'd gone through it? It has also been discovered that if we say the same words as in cliches like, say, oh, I've had a rough day, once upon a time when hearing that and perhaps using the cliched phrase may have meant something. So when we use the same phrase repeatedly, it starts to mean nothing, and it's interpreted as only as words in the brain, nothing more. Writing, journaling can have the same effect as a meditation because your breathing slows down and you kind of get in a zone.
Oh, I like zones.
Like as in getting in the zone.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, Bob. So getting in the zone means your words start to flow more freely and the brain has the experience of a de-stress. So certainly worth a mention, especially to those who haven't allowed themselves to journal, to write it out. It's just so damn beneficial. So give that reticular activating system a bloody good run for its money. It's yours to utilise and benefit from. So first, journaling out any negative thoughts. So important to get that out if you are to enjoy more glimmers. There is a method to the madness here, and it is very important to say you do not require any writing or spelling ability. It is for your eyes and for your sense of advantage and health. Then I start writing out my goals, and depending on the direction of the wind, it may only be one goal, and if I'm feeling goalless, I'll write about a new recipe I might like to try. Even if I don't, it feels more expansive, and who knows, I might actually even try that new recipe.
How's that new walnut burger recipe going?
Well, I think I've got it how I want it. Thanks for asking, Bob.
It's okay.
And then I'll write about what I'm grateful for, and I can never get too far from that. Staying humble keeps me close to my heart and ever grateful that I have the ability to even feel grateful for the smallest things, like, I got up and I got myself dressed today. And glimmers are sensed softly in these times. Though glimmers may sound like something leaning a little to the unscientific side, glimmers are fast gaining traction, and they're worth mentioning, mainly because many of us have been having them for years, but they didn't have a name. They do feel a bit on the magical side. I never questioned them, and I only enjoyed them. Today I had a big old laugh with a friend, and that feeling that comes over you when you're helpless with laughing, knowing that it's putting everything in perspective. It's just such a great feeling, isn't it? It's really hard to feel down about anything if you're really, having a really good giggle. When our nervous system is being regulated, there lies the glimmer. So basically, a glimmer enhances your capacity to manage triggers as well. Your brain is designed to anticipate threats, and glimmers bring a sense of safety and connectedness that we often miss when we're rushing in our day-to-day. Any wonder then, when we're scared or emotional, glimmers may make us feel like we can cope. And when we're attempting to move differently in our life and when we are integrating our own ongoing growth, it does take courage, and it isn't easy, mainly because it's not familiar. And you can do it. You absolutely can do it. And if I can do it, you can do it. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, and thank you too. If we can respond differently, those moments when you detect a glimmer, that feeling happy for what appears to be for no reason, revel in it. You're giving your nervous system a hug, total awareness at its finest. It's the involuntary act of doing something just for you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, me too, Bob. Me too.
I've got a couple of jokes. How can you tell if a tree is a dogwood tree?
By its bark.
Oh, you're not supposed to know that.
All right, what about this? What does garlic do when it gets hot?
Oh, I don't know.
It takes its clothes off. I thought it was quite good. If you see a crime at an Apple store, does that make you an eyewitness?
I don't get it.
No, it doesn't matter, Bob. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you and everybody for joining us today. We really do appreciate it.
We really do.
And so that brings us to an end of another episode. I know I quite enjoyed it, actually.
Well, yeah, I did.
Well, good on you, Bob. So I guess it's, say good day to the family time and give the cuckoo bird a gentle poke, and I'll see you next time, okay? All right.
Goodbye,
Bye.
goodbye.